Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies. And this is the Kabala by Frater S. Machtei. An article from Rosicrucian Digest, Volume 14, Number 3, April 1936. The Kabala by Frater S. Machtei. In dealing with this subject, it is essential, at the outset, to have an understanding of its terminology, its chronology, and of the relationship between practical Kabbalah and theoretical Kabbalah. Kabbalah is derived from the Hebrew root kabel, to receive, and is literally the received or traditional lore. It is the specific term for the esoteric or mystical doctrine concerning God and the universe, asserted to have come down as a revelation to elect saints from a remote past, and preserved only by a privileged few. There is the theosophical or theoretical system, Kabbalah unit, and the theurgy or practical, Kabbalah ma'azit. In the chronology, we encounter some difficulties. The name Kabbalah does not occur in literature before the 11th century. I refer, of course, to the general literature on the subject. The mystical lore of the Geonic and Talmudic periods antedate the modern concepts of Kabbalah and is traced, according to tradition, back to creation, through a series of teachers and saints from the Geonic period, 9th to 11th centuries, when the oral traditions first appeared to have been recorded in treaties. Each system was developed independently of the other. In the 14th century, the gulf between theoretical Kabbalah and practical Kabbalah were bridged by the appearance of the Zohar, or Splendor. In this volume, both systems converged. If the anthropologist is correct in his statement that there is no pure ethnic group, and it is conceded that he is right, how much more must it be true in the field of ideas that the intercourse between peoples greatly influenced their thoughts, and that in the metaphysical studies, the Gnostics, the Neoplatonists, and the Aristotelians, the Aristotelians, the Greco-Arabian philosophers, and others contributed to the present form of the Kabbalah. The speculative school of Kabbalah took for its problem metaphysics in the strict sense of the word, namely, the nature of God and his relation to the world. The other movement was religio-ethical in nature. Practical Kabbalah or mysticism endeavored to apply metaphysics to everyday problems, and after a while, it degenerated into a cult where amulets, angelology, demonology, and superstitions played the leading role, and where the principles of cosmic laws were regulated to a minor and supporting part. Anyone knowing the names and functions of the angels can control all nature and its powers. Only the initiated knew the names and what they actually represented. The followers of the cult conceived of the angels as beings, as physical messengers, intermediaries close to the throne. The term Kabbalah rightfully characterizes the theosophic teachings as an ancient sacred tradition, instead of being a product of human wisdom. The Kabbalah, by which speculative Kabbalah, Kabbalah unit, is essentially, was in its origin, merely a system of metaphysics, but in the course of its development, it included many tenets of dogmatic, divine worship and ethics. God, the world, creation, man, revelations, the Messiah, laws, sin, atonement, etc. Such are the varied subjects it discusses and describes. To depart for a few moments from the technical terminology of the subject, we may profit greatly if we view the subject objectively, examining the problem in the light of motives as distinguished from effects. What prompted these saints, who possessed the knowledge, to reveal it to others? Why does man speculate as to the reasons and causes for his being here? Was it the intent of the early Kabbalists and mystics to train miracle workers, men who should perform the unusual to inspire fear and awe in the minds of the populace? From early Kabbalistic writings, we learn that man had become enslaved to the environment, that he gave little heed to his rightful place as the created image of the divine. It was the purpose of the instruction in the Kabbalah to restore to man his God consciousness. his realization of the use to which he might put the powers with which he had been endowed by the Creator. The Kabbalah sought to impress man that he was a microcosm, a miniature of the macrocosm, and that within him were locked up all the cosmic forces in evidence in the universe. Man has ever been eager and ready to take the bows, to acknowledge the applause, deserved or undeserved. But how to liberate these imprisoned forces, how to make them manifest, were things which had to be taught to man. Man's egotism responds to the title of the great I Am, and the bubble bursts when man's weakness, his inability to be the master, becomes obvious. So it is that we become to understand the task which confronts the Kabbalists, the mystics of all times. For their starting point, they took the doctrine of enslaved, or infinite. It is the doctrine of all Kabbalistic speculation. God is the infinite, unlimited being, to whom one neither can nor may ascribe any attributes whatever, who can therefore be designed merely as enslaved, without end, the infinite. Hence, the idea of God can be postulated merely negatively. It is known what God is not, but not what he is. The question presents itself, how did such an one create the universe? To which we have the answer in the Sephirat, or emanations, the progressive stages by which this enslaved, the infinite, projected itself and, through combinations of the Sephirat, in trinities or triads, accomplished creation. The doctrine of the Sephirat is perhaps the most important doctrine of the Kabbalah. The Sephirat are the tools to the divine power, superior creatures that are, however, totally different from the primal being. God is immanent in the Sephirat, but he is himself more than may be perceived in these forms of idea and being. The Sephirat themselves, in and through which all changes take place in the universe, are composite insofar as two natures may be distinguished in them, namely, 1. That in and through which all change takes place, and 2. That which is unchangeable and light or the divine power. The Kabbalists call these two different natures of the Sephirat, or meaning light, and Kalam, meaning vessels. For as vessels of different color reflect the light of the sun differently without producing any change in it, so the divine light manifested in the Sephirat is not changed by their seeming differences. A detailed description of the progressive stages by which the Sephirat unite in triads to accomplish creation would be too technical and too lengthy for one article. These conclusions, however, are interesting. The first three Sephirat, Keter, crown or primal will of God, Hokmah, wisdom, and Binah, intelligence, from a unity among themselves, that is, knowledge. The knower and the known are in God identical, and thus the world is only the expression of the ideas or the absolute forms of intelligence. We further note that the first three Sephirat form the intelligible world. The second triad is moral in character, while the third triad of Sephirat constitutes the natural world. The 10th Sephirat, Malkut, domination, is that in which the will, the plan, and the active forces become manifest, the sum of the permanent and imminent activity of all Sephirat. In the Kabbalah, the soul is threefold, being composed of Nefesh, Ruha, and Neshama. Nefesh is the animal, sensitive principle in man, and is in immediate touch with the body. Ruha represents the moral nature, being the seat of good and evil desires, accordingly as it turns towards Neshama, or Nefesh. Neshama is pure intelligence, pure spirit, incapable of good or evil. It is pure divine light, the climax of soul light. The Kabbalistics explain the connection between soul and body as follows. All soul exists before the formation of the body in the suprasensible world, being united in the course of time with their respective bodies. the descent of the soul in the body is necessitated by the finite nature of the former. It is bound to unite with the body in order to take its part in the universe, to contemplate the spectacle of creation, to be conscious of itself and its origin, and finally to return, after having completed its task in life, to the inexhaustible fountain of light and life, God. While Neshama, the pure spirit, divine light, intelligence, ascends to God, Ruah, the moral nature, enters Eden to enjoy the pleasures of paradise, and Nephesh, the animal, remains in peace on earth. This applies only to the just. At the death of the godless, Neshama, being stained with sins, encounters obstacles that make it difficult for it to return to its source, and until it has returned, Ruah may not enter Eden, and Nephesh finds no peace on earth. Closely connected with this view is the doctrine of transmigration of the soul, reincarnation, on which the Kabbalah lies great stress. In order that the soul may return to its source, it must previously have reached full development of all its perfections in terrestrial life. If it has not fulfilled this condition in the course of one life, it must begin all over again in another body, continuing until it has completed its task. Natural magic depending largely on man himself. For, according to the Kabbalah, all men are endowed with insight and magical powers which they may develop. This means especially mentioned are Kawan Ha, intense meditation, in order to attract the higher spiritual influences, a strong will exclusively directed toward its object, and a vivid imagination in order that the impressions from the spiritual world may enter profoundly into the soul and be retained there. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.